So we're going to talk about, I guess, precocious bloomers is what I'm talking about today. So early bloomers, and here in Raleigh, that is a relative thing as far as I'm concerned. Some of the things I'm going to be talking about have actually been flowering for, I'd say, a couple months. Others are just early for what they are. So others are just beginning to flower. I'm not going to focus on anything like mostly bulbs right now because, well, next week I get to talk about narcissus, so I'm skipping totally narcissus, and that'll be in our midweek program. So anyways, without too much further ado, we're going to head this way behind me down the sidewalk towards the pedestrian entrance where we're going to get our first few plants. Okay, our first plant is actually hiding back here in this bed. So that's why I passed around a few stems of it. This is a really early bloomer. Actually, about 2 weeks ago, this was non-existent here. You didn't see anything really, or maybe just the hints of a little bit of green showing up. This is a Cardamine. This is Cardamine quinquefolia, if I remember right without looking here, before I've looked. But we have lots of native Cardamines. Does anybody have a weed that comes up in their pots? Let's see, bittercrest. Yes. This is its cousin. This is a perennial species. Bittercrest is an annual one, but bittercrest is actually a North American native as far as I know. This one is not. This one is one that is found in Southeast Europe and going over into Northern Iran, so the Middle East and Southeastern Europe. It is very early flowering. I mean, very quick to flower once it gets going. Typically, mid to late February, it starts to come up and it's flowering by the 1st of March, and it is going to sleep probably by the late April. It's already saying, I've had enough of this and I'm going to get some rest here until next year. So right now, this has just come out in the last, say, 3 to 4 days, or maybe less than a week. There weren't any flowers here last week. So this is actually in the cabbage family, the Brassicaceae. And when you see that crest, there's a lot of crest. All those crests are bitter crest and watercress. Those are all Brassicaceae. And next of kin to your cabbage, your broccoli, cauliflower, mustards. So all related, and they all like cool weather. So this is in that same realm here. Later on, we're actually, if you look ahead, we will be seeing another species of Cardamine as well that is a little bit different habit of this. It's this one likes to spread, and supposedly, I don't think it has gotten that big for us here. It can get up to 12 inches tall, but a couple feet wide at least. There were several divisions put in here and they have all merged together, but it has not taken long. This has only been in here, I think Doug planted this probably in around 2019, 2020 even. And it's made a substantial mass here. Great one to work in shade, part shade. Ideal where it's going to get a little bit of winter sun and before the trees leaf out, because this is going to sleep before the leaves are totally expanded, and so it can have cohabitate with those plants as an understory with no problem. So any questions about Cardamine? It is now merging with Cyparis, which is right in here. There's hosta in here as well. So there's some other deciduous things in here. So you can put this underneath some of your summer active stuff, which is great. And it will also just intermingle around other plants as well. It's never that vigorous that it's going to outcompete too many things. Any other questions? And actually, you can eat this if you do need to. If you get too much of it and it starts to take over, you can use it as a green. I actually haven't tasted this one. I have another Cardamine over there. It's one of the native ones. It's a little dry, but this one's, if you need something to add to your salad during the winter, you know. And you could use them as garnish. The flowers, if nothing else, would be wonderful in a salad to add a little bit of color when you get too much of it. So, no more questions? Okay, so the next plant, oh, it's right here. Hellebores, and I know hellebores, we have so many of them down here, and probably a lot of you have them in your own gardens. The ones I'm going to highlight today are not the old style hellebores, and I hate to say it, I'm starting to not like them because they seed around everywhere, and once they're established, you really have to work to get rid of them. It's because they are very fertile and they produce lots and lots and lots of babies. Well, I'm going to talk about two major groups of hellebores today, and this is one of them. This is a Helleborus. It's an Abcrd02 hybrid, and this one here in front of us is, let's see, I have to look because the names are terrible on them, but the trade names are much better. I know the trade name, but the real name for this one is Abcrd02. Wonderful, catchy name, isn't it? This is Anna's Red. This is one of the that's been around now probably for 15 years or so, but not widely planted. We've only had it here in the garden since about, let's say about 2016. These Abcrd02 hybrids actually have that hybrida hellebore in their bloodline, but they're crossed with, I have to look here, I have my cheat sheet, Helleborus Abcrd02. The Abcrd02 is another hybrid in itself, and it has minimal fertility. Abcrd02 is a cross between Helleborus lividus and Helleborus niger. So niger is the Christmas rose. And lividus is a somewhat tender species, which has a lot of purple pigmentations in it most of the time, and it's a smaller growing one. For the longest time, you could get these Abcrd02 hybrids, which are fairly closely related species of hellebore. They're in a separate subsection of hellebore from where all the hybridas come from. And they hadn't been able to cross those for the longest time and get these really spectacular hybrids. These hybrids here, the flowers tend to be much more upright and outward facing than your hybridas, which tend to be more pendulous, and you have to look underneath the foliage or underneath to see the actual inside of the flowers. So they've gotten that an improved habit. Also, and I don't know if you're starting to see it, but we'll see it on some of the other ones, like over here, the foliage is coming up. And let's see if I can show you. This is a really good one. Oh, here's one that will work, and it's in the foreground. So I don't know if you can see the venation on this. It has this variegation, more or less. And when it first comes out, it can be pink or cream against the dark stems. And so it adds another dimension to the plant that even when it's not in flower, you get these rather attractive foliage on these. In this area, there's also two other selections that we have here. I think on that side over there, I have Dana's Dulcet. And down there, I think the ones in this area here are Dorothy's Dawn, are the trade names for them. They're EPB30 and EPB29, respectively. Again, those catchy names that they're using. So, like the significance I was saying about the hybridas are so almost weedy at times. These are sterile. I mean, if you get a seedling, you are going, I mean, that's remarkable. If you get one seedling. My guess is, I haven't looked up how they're breeding these, but my guess is they're probably using tissue culture to do embryo rescue from before the seed abort, or the embryo aborts, they can rescue it to get these. But I'm not certain on that. But they are becoming more available, and I highly recommend these. These don't bulk up terribly quickly, I am finding out, on these Abcrd02 hybrids, but they are well worth planting. They're not going to take over your yard. So, any questions about these, Marilyn?
You said Abcrd02, and then you talked about Abcrd02.
Abcrd02.
Is it Abcrd02 times something?
So, Abcrd02 times hybridus.
Okay.
So, crossing these here, which for the longest time they couldn't figure out how to do it with Abcrd02 because there are two separate sections within, I think think I've done a hellebore talk. I didn't go back to it. It's on YouTube where I talk about these, but they're far enough apart that it's a difficult cross, and they weren't able to do it for the longest time, but they figured out how to do it, and you get these hybrids, which are quite different, but they have some of the characteristics, the colors actually that you get from the hybridas, and very vigorous plants, fairly vigorous plants, and then the really cool foliage and low fertility of these Boulardier hybrids.
Any cultural differences?
Pretty much the same as far as I can tell. They're going to take shade or actually a fair amount of sun without too much worry. They don't want to be wet. I don't know how long these are going to live. The hybrids can live 20, 30 years if they're happy. Niger, which is one of the parents of the Boulardier, tends to be relatively short-lived. So I think you're going to get something somewhere in between in a 5 to 15 year range versus a really long-lived, super fertile hellebore that takes over your landscape if you let it. Any other questions? Okay, so we're gonna go a long distance to the next one too. So this is one of the wild gingers, or it's not the ginger lilies that you think of that we have in the summer. They're not related at all. This is an Asarum. This is in the Aristolochiaceae. Can you spit that one out 3 times fast? That's the pipevine family of plants. We have native Asarums, but they aren't as spectacular often as this one, though there are some that are pretty cool. This is an Asian one, and this is Asarum maximum Ling Ling. Why would it be called Ling Ling? Panda. So yeah, this is the panda ginger, as another way of calling this one. And pretty much all this, the species has those nearly black and white flowers on that, which are pretty darn cool. But you have to get down to appreciate them because, again, they're held underneath the evergreen foliage on these. This is a selection that our friend Ozzie Johnson from Georgia made, I don't know how long ago. I didn't quite figure that part out, but it's one that's readily available. It's a really good one, very vigorous. It has done well here in this terrible dry shade. I do irrigate here a little bit, but in the summer when it's nasty, but it doesn't care. And it starts flowering. It's probably been flowering for close to a month, but who would have known underneath the foliage? It's one of those ones you have to get up close again and personal. Deer resistant, and actually the hellebores, we'll go back to that. Marilyn didn't ask that, but yeah, they're deer resistant too. The Cardamine, I don't think it would matter. Like I said, we can make a salad out of it. They probably wouldn't like that. It's one of those things that we like, they don't. This species is one that's actually endemic to China. So again, going there with Ling Ling, but this is a little bit more spectacular, like I said, than our native ones. Any questions while we're here? Okay.
Do they tend to kind of
So
family all bloom at the same time? Sizes and shapes?
That is Asarums in general?
Yeah.
So, okay, the question is, do Asarums all flower about the same time? Some of our native ones do flower at the same time as this. A lot of them are late winter and early spring. Some of them are a little bit later. I have one funky one over there, which is, I think it's, is it Speciosum? It's one that's from Alabama, of all places, but there's a clump of it over there. It won't flower until May or June. And it has these actually fairly large flowers, much like this one, but they're striped. But it's not a precocious bloomer. It's a little later. So that's why it's not in this group. But if you would get down on your hands and knees and you go find some of our native ones, they're coming into bud as well right now in the woods if you do that. Let's see, Aerifolium, and I think, let's see, is it minor or minus? I can't remember what they say. I always say it wrong. One or the other for the Asarum. It's more of a round-leafed, smaller one. Typically has really nice marbling on it. Those are coming into bud now, but they're probably not out quite yet. Any other questions before we actually move from this location? Okay, we're gonna head down the pathway that way. Okay, now we're at our next plant here. This is Iris unglicularis, and this is one called Winter Echoes. This is the Iris unglicularis in general. They are found in around the Mediterranean region, southern Mediterranean. So in areas, let's see, I put where they're from. Algeria, Greece, Turkey, Spain, or Syria, Tunisia. So often called Algerian iris is their common name for these. There's not a ton of selections available of these, but they are great in our climate if you can get them. And this winter echo is one that is actually looking quite spectacular down here. This clump's doing great. That was not doing too bad, but I had to extricate that one from my Muhlenbeckia last year. So that's part of the reason it's not as nice as this one. But you can see up close the flowers on that. These are a clear, nice purple. So these are winter flowering, and they can start flowering as early as like November. Like I said, some of these plants that are precocious may have been going for quite some time, but they do a little off and on through the mild times in the winter. And right now that we're actually starting to warm up, we're getting the most flowering out of them. It's not just one or two flowers. They start to really put on a show right now. So this selection here, Winter's Echo, came from some breeding work that was done by, I looked up the guy's name, and I have Rick Tasco. He's an iris breeder in California. He's originally from Pennsylvania, I was reading, so my home state. But he has Superstition Iris Gardens in California. If you want to look up more about some of his irises, he doesn't just do Anglicularis. I was looking in the Iris Society. He had literally, I don't know, hundreds of different cultivars of different types of irises he has been introducing. But one of them being the Iris Anglicularis Winter Echo, which again for us is a really cool one. They can take a fair amount of shade, though don't want full shade, and they will take sun as well. They want it well drained. They don't want to be in a wet spot. So, but you want to have them someplace you can see them during the winter months too. So don't hide them away. They aren't the most spectacular during the summer. They just kind of look a little bit grassy. They're not, you can see the leaf blade on these is not too wide. So it's not like the bearded iris that kind of have these broad leaves that kind of look atrocious in the summer as they start to go semi-dormant. These look fairly similar through most of the year, so they aren't bad to use. But anyways, they can get a little, if we have a hard winter, they can get a little bit more burnt. But even with the weather we've had this year, we've only gotten down, I think, in the upper or mid. So we got down about 11 or 12 or 13 right in this area of the garden at least once this winter. So looks pretty darn good for that. Anyways, just a really good iris type to find, if you can find it, to try in your own landscapes. Any questions about Iris anglicularis, and in this case, Winter Echo?
Do you guys clean up any of the dead-looking foliage?
You can. We don't always get there.
Okay.
If you wanted to, you could get in here and actually pull out a lot of this. I have cut them back before, and I did kind of regretted doing that. The buds all got burnt then.
Yeah.
So when we had a cold spell after that. So I don't, unless you have to, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
Any other questions? So we're gonna work actually just right behind me here. Our next plant is Hemimelis intermedia, and I have to look at the name because I can't spit this one out with from memory. Tsukuba no Kirine, or AKA Shibamichi Red, is another name you may find this one under. This is a witch hazel that was introduced by Dr. Akira Shibamichi in Japan several years ago. And it's one of the reddest of the hybrid witch hazel. So it's the intermediates. You'll sometimes see this one listed as a japonica, but it's listed now. I mean, acknowledged now that it's probably an intermedia. So an intermedia is a japonica crossed with a mollis. So, anyways. Most of those are on the yellows and orange tones, not this deep pink, which this one to me kind of looks like a deciduous loropetalum, which we can all grow loropetalum here. So, but this one presents it a little bit differently. These are earlier flowering than loropetalum too, but this is later than many other Hemimelis, so it's noted for that. But it's that color that really stands out to me. Yesterday, the light was a little different here, and it was just spectacular. spectacular. Right now it seems a little dull, but if you get it again at different times of the day, it's quite spectacular. And you don't get this deep pink to red on too many of the hemamelis. One that I can think of that is a vernalis hybrid, or one of our native species, is amethyst, and I really like that one too. But it's a bit earlier flowering, and it tends to be a little more on the purple shade. Purple side than red. So for me, this is a spectacular one, and you don't see this selection very often. So people may be wondering what's going on down here at the base on this. I'm going to be proactive, and actually, so hemamelis are typically propagated by grafting. There are a few places you might get them that they are grown from cuttings. And this one was grafted, but it's not grafted on a hemamelis, another witch hazel, which can be problematic when they are grafted on witch hazel and the other witch hazel suckers, and you aren't sure which one is the rootstock and which one is the desirable scion. And in this case, they used Perodia, which is actually a close cousin to the witch hazel or hemamelis. So the Perodia comes up on this, and I use this for my interns in the summer, and I quiz them. So I haven't cut it all back yet, but you can see the suckered growth up off the rootstock on this. And you get the same type of suckering shoots off of, if they use vernalis, for instance, as a rootstock. So it's better that you can distinguish between the two, I feel, and have suckers than to have one you can't quite tell, is that the right one, or am I taking the wrong branch off? I can tell on this one. So anyways, that's what's going on there. Any questions about hemamelis? Tsukuba no Kirine.
Fall color.
I don't know, to tell you the truth. Some hemamelis have okay fall color. I don't pay attention. That happens at a time, you know, this moonlight in the garden, and I'm kind of preoccupied. Or it might happen later in November when I'm back home in Pennsylvania. That seems to be when the best color is here in North Carolina. I miss out on it. And I don't know, does this one have any fragrance to you? Yeah. Some hemamelis have really good fragrance, and others not so much, but it can. I can't notice any right now, but that doesn't mean there isn't some at different times. The air's been moving pretty good the last day or so, so the volatiles may be broken up. Okay, so any other questions before we move on? Okay, hearing none. We're gonna head back up that way. Okay, our next plant is behind me. You see a tree that's evergreen and has white to creamy colored flowers on it. That is Magnolia Madiae. And now I've been here at the Arboretum almost, I'm working on 20 years. I'm in over 19 years now. And these Magnolia Madiaes, which we have, there's 3 right in this area, and I have another one down that way. There's 2 right here, 1, 2, there's a smaller flowered one. It's just covered in flowers. They've been my favorites from the start. They're evergreen. In Western Pennsylvania, there aren't that many evergreens. And then to have something that flowers very early. Most years, they might not be totally out, but I get flowers in January. So that big one there has been flowering for probably over a month. Over there. This is a little bit later. This one's in a little bit more, these 2 are actually later because they're in the shade. I find that so remarkable. They are very precocious though, in that they flower very early. They are closely related to another one which I have back there, which always gets damaged, is Magnolia cavallerii. And that one typically flowers late December and early January, and then it gets frozen. And it gets damaged to the trunk, which has been problematic. The Madiaes have not had that issue, even though they will be flowering about the same time, just within a week or 2 later, they'll start to come into flower. So these are some of our Southeast Asian magnolias. This, like I said, is probably one of my favorite species of magnolias we have in the garden. I find the flowers are actually hardier when they're open than many of our deciduous magnolias. I don't know if it's the slight insulation value of the evergreen foliage around them. They might get some damage, but the whole flower typically doesn't get nasty. It will get a little ivory, sometimes a little bit of cinnamon on the edges of the petals. But they typically will survive down into the mid-20s, even the lower 20s, while some of the deciduous magnolias that we have in the garden, you get in the mid-20s and they become mush. And then they just hang there. They turn to brown handkerchiefs, as I say, and just kind of hold onto that stem and just sit there and taunt you and say, why? They look nasty. But that's some of the ones that have another species, which I'm not even going to talk about really today, but denuedata in them. Those are like the saucer magnolias. I think someone said they were from New York over here. And up there, you'd see the saucer magnolias or the Magnolia solengianas, which are a denuedata hybrid. And they do the same things. And that's what I grew up with in Western Pennsylvania. Then around April, they'd start to flower, and the next day we'd have a freeze, and they'd just turn into mush. So this does not do that. This flowers, again, at least a month, and sometimes 2 to 3 months, depending on the individual tree and the location I have in the garden, because they're all different. They're all seedlings that we have in the garden. This one, to me, has almost a tulip-like flower. It's much more closed. This is truly one of my personal favorites right here, though, this one. What else can I say? The fragrance, Betsy was remarking about the fragrance, is that I can smell a little bit of this magnolia from right here. If you get your nose right in there, it's very pleasant. It's very different. It doesn't have the lemon tones that we have on the Magnolia grandifloras and our native, which is native, and Virginianas, and even it's different than the deciduous magnolias too. So one of my favorites is, like I said, for precociousness as well as just in general a great plant is Magnolia madiae. Any questions? So what zone will this go to? I'd say zone 7A is probably the limits. I wouldn't think zone 6. The plants will probably suffer too much. And I think even, the bud, they might flower some, but I think it's not going to be as hardy as a grandiflora even, which they are now finding will grow into zone 6 and sometimes zone 5. Yeah. If you want to play around with it, if you can get one, try it. But I would protect it, and I wouldn't expect zone 6. 7A is probably the safest. In Maryland?
Sunshade, what is it?
Okay, so these two here get no summer sun whatsoever. This is the north side of that crepe myrtle. There's no sun here, and I think that is a very respectable flowering. Yeah. But I don't know if you can see the one over there real well. That one flowers so heavily, and it flowers repeatedly. For about 2 to 3 months, actually. And the other great thing about some of them, I find, is we get repeat flowering. Sometimes in September and October, we'll get some scattering of flowering on them. And it's actually a reasonable amount. They are persistent on their flowering. So they're precocious, but also persistent too at the same time. Yep.
So where can you get them?
I didn't look up to see where to get it. That's what you guys, we all have the internet nowadays. That's what I'd say. If I try to find someplace, I look online. You may try, I don't know if in the past Camellia Forest had a hybrid, which actually which is right up here in the corner of the Lath House, called Eternal Spring, which is one that's of Cliff Park's hybrids. And it's a cross between Magnolia laevifolia, which is right behind us, and madiae. And it takes on the madiae characteristic of flowering. And it, as its name, Eternal Spring, says it keeps going. So that's one to look for. If you can't find a madiae, go for Eternal Spring.
Is that a particular cultivar?
No, these were seedlings. And I didn't look up the records on these to see where we got these. I should have. Some of them, I know I have one down there that came from Camellia Forest as well, behind the perennial border. Okay, we're gonna head this way. We're just gonna go inside here into the Japanese garden. Everybody in here, I think. I don't see anybody else here. Any heads? There's Trish. I think she was one of the last ones from what I can tell. Anyways, our next plant here in this case is Illicium anisatum. Wait, did I say it right? Yes, anisatum. And this is Murasaki no Sato, AKA purple glaze. And you wonder about the purple glaze. That comes later in the season. The new growth on this is a spectacular, glossy, dark reddish purple. And that's where that comes in. But right now, I'm not looking at it for that characteristic. I am looking at it because it's in flower right now. And it's probably been in flower for a couple weeks, to tell you the truth. And there's still quite a few buds on this. This is one of the Asian Elysiums. We have American Elysiums too, and I haven't paid attention. Some of them, the Mexicanus and Floridanums, can be fairly early flowering as well, and they tend to be on the burgundy or red shade, as well as there are some white forms. But I haven't noticed any of them yet in the garden, but they'll be coming soon. But this is one of the first ones for us this season, is the anisetums, and I just love the fragrance of the foliage. Just do not eat this. This is one of the star anise, but this is not the star anise that you cook with. That is Elysium vernum, and I don't know. There's smell. Pass around a crushed leaf and smell. I'll get some over here. The other benefits of these. I got a flower even with that one. But anyways, this is not the same as species. This is toxic. And most of your Elysiums, aside from vernum, are toxic. So don't mess with them, even if they have a fruit that looks just like what you buy in the store, unless you know that it is truly a vernum. We can grow that, I believe, here, but it's not very common. You see anisetum, and I actually have another anisetum just outside here, just the straight species. But wanted to highlight this for right now. They will take shade. This again gets very little summer sun. They prefer partial shade to be an ideal condition, to light shade. Though they can take sun begrudgingly a little bit. They might say burn a little if it gets too hot, but they will take that. But they can also take shade, and they'll be a little more open. But this one, actually, it's hard to see even, I'm noticing it down in here. There's actually variegation too with purple glaze or Murasaki no Sato. But again, it's much more noticeable on the new growth when it comes out, probably in about a month. We'll get that. And it'll be post-flowering for the most part at that point. But again, a precocious flower, because this year we are actually late on our flowering in comparison to the last about 5 years. Everything is 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks behind the last couple of years, but it's actually about normal. The long-term normal is what we're having this year. So any questions while we are right here? Hearing none, we are going to go to our next plant, which is in the Lath house, and we are going to be in a crowded spot. I'm not going to talk about Daphne, but sniff it as you go. I figure most of you know about Daphnes. Okay, I think most people are reasonably close now. So our next plant, if you look at your list, is Rhodelia henryi, and I am going to murder the name of this plant, the cultivar of this plant, Takeshitesi. Tesai? I never took Japanese. But anyways, this is a Japanese selection of Rhodelia henryi. And I really couldn't find anything specific about this selection, to tell you the truth. But I think it tends to be a little bit more compact, and it probably has a better color on it. But this year we are graced with flowers. The last couple of years we have lucked out. Some years they don't get to flower at all, even though they will be in full bud. So this is an evergreen, and this is, does anybody know what this might be related to? We saw a relative of this earlier, and it was actually a similar color. Witch hazel. This isn't the witch hazel family, and it does not, it looks so bizarre to me in comparison to that. Even for me, knowing my plant families and stuff, I can't believe this isn't the witch hazel family, but it is. So the Hemimelidaceae, and it just baffles me. Like some people, someone said rhododendron. I can see that, except for the petals are wrong. But anyways, so this one, it's a winter flower. It's just come out in the last like 2 weeks, and it has actually gotten through the last little cold spell we had when we were down around 20, about a week and a half ago, I think now. Yeah, almost a week and a half ago. And I was surprised. I thought the buds would be goners. They have survived. This winter, I think we've actually been blessed with a cool winter, which has stayed fairly constant. We haven't had the swings until we're starting to have them now. And it's allowed these buds to weather. They were still fairly dormant when we had the cold spells, when we got into the teens. Because often when we have normal January and February and the temperature goes like this, the buds might not visibly show it, but they're out of broken dormancy, and they've lost a lot of their hardiness, and they get frozen when we get into the upper teens to around 20, and they just then fall off. This year we're getting the flowers, which is really cool. That's the thing you take a chance with these early bloomers, these precocious bloomers. And so just a really cool one to look at here. They are native to Yunnan, China. Southeastern Yunnan, and in the wild, this species can get up to 45 feet. Can you imagine a tree 45 feet tall with these purple or deep pink to purple flowers dangling off of it? It must be very spectacular. For us, I'm going to guess they're going to get 15 to 20 long term if we had them in the right spots. We are on the edge to get them to flower. Like I said, they are getting some hardier selections available on some of these, but most of them, zone 8, maybe 7B is going to be, 8A, 7B is going to be its range for right now of the available selections. And anyways, this is just a really cool plant that it's flowering this year. I mean, let's say it flowers 3 out of 5 years. Without getting terrible damage. So just take the time to look at this one as you go by. And the buds on it, even if it doesn't get to flower, they look like little shingled things. They're very intricate, tight. There's bracts around the base of the inflorescence. And I just find that very attractive, even if it doesn't get to flower. But when you get the actual petals to open up, it is truly spectacular. It wants a little bit of a shade. Probably it would do great under a pine forest, though it grows in broadleaf evergreen forest in Southeast Asia. So it can take a fair amount of shade. Being that it is evergreen, it's able to photosynthesize year round. So that's one of the benefits of being evergreen. They probably don't want to be in full sun. Anyways, we're going to head to our next plant, and I have to look where we're going. Oh, we're going to the White Garden next. But okay, I think everybody's pretty much here. Our next plant is this, I think this one right here. This little one behind me. This is Magnolia lobneri Merle. The history behind Magnolia lobneri is it's a hybrid. It's a cross between Magnolia stellata, the star magnolias, which are the smaller, shrubbier looking magnolias that you'll often see around. And right now I've been seeing a bunch of them growing and flowering actually in the city. So these are flowering around here. And then crossed with Magnolia cobus, which is very closely related, sometimes lumped together, but they tend to be much more arboreal and single trunked, and don't get they get larger than a stellata. So that's the lobneri, and the original hybrid of that was recorded as occurring in Germany in around 1917 by, let's see if I can spit his name, Max Lobner. And I probably messed up the pronunciation because that's probably not how it would sound in German. But the one behind us is Merle, and Merle is the history behind that selection it's named after Dr. Elmer Merle. He was the administrator of the botanic collections at Harvard in the first part of the 20th century. And in 1935, he became the director there. I did not find out how long he was director. I didn't look that deep though, but that's where the cultivar Merle came from. There are several other selections that you'll see. Leonard Meisel's one, Ballerina, Water Lily. Those are some selections of lobneri. The nice thing about lobneri is it's fairly hardy. I said that some of the other magnolias, like the saucer magnolias, the magnolias denuedata hybrids, they tend to freeze very easily. These stellata lobneri and cobus have much better cold tolerance to the flower buds, as well as they don't open all their buds at once. So if some of them are damaged, there tends to be more, very profuse flowering on them. And so they will take down into the low 20s and look fairly decent. If you look, there's probably some damage in here, like right here. You can see a little bit of the damage from the last weekend whenever we got into the 20s. But the majority of these are clean. I have a denuedata over that way. It got the same temperature and it was just covered in buds that were just about ready to burst into flower, and I'll be lucky to get a quarter of them to open if that at this point. Wow, this just is spectacular. So better cold tolerance. It's a little more compact, and the lobneri, I said about Cobus was a tree, and stellata is a shrubbier species where there's multi-trunked. So this tends to be multi-trunked, and but larger than a stellata, almost as large as a Cobus, but again with the multi-trunks. So Merrill right now is just, for every year it makes a wonderful display here in the garden. I can't say too much else about it. I think it's just a great tree for us here. Any questions? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to turn around and go near these bench over here. So our next one here, if you haven't looked at your list, is Cardamine bulbosa, or bulbosa, bulbosa, snow showers. So this is actually one of our native cardamines. This is not the one that's weedy that comes up in every container that you get one little thing and it goes ping and it comes up everywhere and you can never quite get rid of them all. This wasn't here 3 weeks ago. Again, 2 to 3 weeks ago. No signs of this plant. But this is one that's found actually pretty much everywhere east of the Rockies, though sparingly in some places. I guess it doesn't occur in Maine, but it's found throughout the eastern half of North America. In the wild, it occurs in fairly moist places, so along streams, seeps, open pasture where there might be some moisture. But in the garden, it can take fairly dry or average garden soils. It does quite fine here. Very early, again, flowering, and again for about a month, and then it will go to sleep for the summer. Again, so you can plant something, or this around something that's summer active, and then have this here for the winter, and you know, they share spaces, trading spaces, sharing spaces, you know, without being overwhelming by any means. And this has been here probably since 2001 or not 2021, 2022. Yes, I have 2020 on the accession on here. So anyways, it has not spread excessively, but this is an introduction from Plant Delights Nursery or Juniper Level Botanic Gardens. I don't know if Tony found this one or if one of the other employees collected this one. It's from Halifax County, so here in North Carolina. So this is a truly native selection of this Cardamine bulbosa, and it's not overly used. So if you can find it, I recommend this for some early display. And if you don't like it, you can always eat it. So, so now I think everyone's here. We're here. This is why I'm here. Is this hellebore? I mentioned earlier that there was a second group of hellebores that I'm really recommending now. It is the glandorfensis type hellebores, and the hybrid with those. So I told you that this gets really complicated, and I have 3 levels of the hybrid here. So this is a hybrid between an Eric Smithii and those weeds right there in front of you, more or less, the hybridas. And you can see why I'm not recommending them. If you look at the ground around that little plant right here near this light, those are seedlings of Helleborus hybrida. That's why I'm not recommending them anymore. They are just so prolific. Again, this is nearly, if not totally sterile. This is a cross between, glandorfensis are a cross between a hybrida and Helleborus Eric Smithii. Eric Smithii is a hybrid between Sternii, which is a hybrid, and Niger, the Christmas rose again. And Sternii is a cross between Lividus and Angustifolius, which Lividus was in the parentage of the Ibergensis as well. But this has Gudifolius, I'm sorry, as an added species involved in this, and that's the Corsican hellebore, more or less. These have the colors, they're getting the colors from the hybridas, and you're getting these very thick foliage from the Eric Smithii. The Eric Smithii are typically just a cream, maybe with a pink blush to them. You're getting some colors now, like this is a Picati. There's another one over there. You're getting true pinks now in these. And the flowers on these, they're just how many are there? I mean, it's so much more visible than those hybridas there as far as I'm concerned. These are superior. I like these actually better than the Ibergensis that I showed you earlier. These seem to bulk up much more quickly in my experience. And this series here is Ice and Roses, which you can readily find the Ice and Roses series. This is Ice and Roses Picati. Its real name is terrible. COSEH 5000. Isn't that wonderful? These Glandorfensis are probably, of the current hybrids available, my favorites, I think, I have to say, of the Helleborus, because they have these upward flower stalks, and they are pretty much above the foliage, so they're presenting their flowers very at a much better level. And again, they're not self-sowing everywhere, and great vigor to them. So that is why I recommend these, and they are very precocious. Sometimes they're flowering the end of December, the first of the year. So these have been out for a while. And just keep on going. All the Hellebores, they don't actually have flower petals. So what you're seeing that are the colored parts of them are sepals. They aren't true petals. And as they age, it's like the little green parts at the base of a rose flower are the sepals. And that just persists, and it'll fade. It'll start with a color or be pure white, or it could start even as green, but then it fades to a green if it wasn't already, and begins to photosynthesize, and it's just persistent. And they aren't producing copious amounts of seeds, so they make copious amounts of buds on these inflorescence, and they're just great as far as I'm concerned. Any questions about these Glandorfensis hybrid Hellebores? Okay, seeing none, we are gonna wander down this pathway here to that pink tree over there. So as you drove here today, you may have seen some cherries flowering along the street, and a tight conical, real dense habit typically. Those are probably, they're a softer pink. It's probably Prunus okame, which is, Prunus okame is an Incisa campanulata hybrid. And I didn't look up the history of that, but it's been around for forever. It's one of the most commonly used around here. You'll see them at entryways to housing developments and things. In the median down western, for instance, you will see them as well. It's a softer pink. So what this is a hybrid from the National Arboretum from, oh darn, they did it in the early 80s. I think 83 was the hybrid, I think, if I remember right. It wasn't introduced until the early 2000s, but this is one called First Lady, Prunus First Lady. Prunus First Lady is a cross between that okame back crossed with a campanulata. Prunus campanulata isn't as hardy. I have one over in the Plantsman's Wood over there. It's been flowering actually for almost a month this year, but some years it gets decimated. If we have a truly cold spell into the below 15, the buds will typically get totally zapped, but if they've already expanded. But this has a much more intense color to it than okame. Our plant, I hate to say it, is not the most shapely. It should have a very similar shape to okame, but we lost the top on ours several years ago. So it doesn't have this gumdrop shape or that is more typical of this selection, but it still has the much more intense pink coloration that I find much more attractive than okame, which is so widely used. You don't see this one. I do not know why. It is propagatable. It can either be grafted or grown from some cuttings. I get some root suckers here too, and that's actually because this one was grown from cuttings. So it's on its own roots. And this one, I have to say, if you had been here a little over a month ago, it was covered in a passion flower, which got a little out of hand. You can still see a little bit of the passion flower we couldn't get out of the crepe myrtle. This was totally covered. And despite not having any sunlight last year because of the passion flower that was on it, it has managed to do a display like this. I find that truly remarkable. And I was afraid I was going to pull off every single flower bud too when we were removing the passion flower from it. So Again, this is hardier than Campanulata, but it's a much better and more intense color than Okame. And maybe a hair less hardy, but it's still comparable. And Okame at least is zone 6, if not zone 5B hardy. So it can be grown throughout North Carolina and through most of the mid-Atlantic up into the Northeast with no problem. I think it's a week or so earlier, because the Okames, the question was whether it has the same bloom time as Okame. This was flowering a little before Okame for us, because, like I said, they're on Western. I know up near Rex, and near where I live is up that direction, up Blue Ridge, and I've been seeing them for a few days, about a week less than this. The Campanulata is much earlier too, so it's kind of an intermediate. Okay, we're gonna go around the corner here. Actually, we're gonna go through the rose garden. Our second to last precocious bloomer is this one here. This is not the longest flowering, but this is a cherry. This is another prunus. This is Prunus takeshimensis. And this is from Yulong Island in Korea. I didn't know that until yesterday. Yulongdo, yeah, cherry. So the Yulongdo cherry is what they commonly call this one, possibly, in South Korea. And it's not widely planted. I do not know why. It's been really impressing me the last few years. It didn't flower well last year. It seems to have a cyclic flowering, but I love the fragrance. I don't know if I'm passing around a branch and you need to sniff it. It smells of benzaldehyde. Almond extract or cherry flavoring is benzaldehyde. And it smells like a cherry. I wouldn't know why. But this is just great. Early flowering, just about a week and a half or 2 weeks of flowering though for us, it seems. Because this was just coming out last week, and we're approaching finish. And look, it's almost in leaf. Next week it will be with the warmth that we're supposed to have. So, but I really do like this one. It's a little later than some of the other cherries. Apparently, they've started planting this around the tidal basin in DC. And part of the reason for that is because they're having flooding issues. This species can take short-term root inundation and water. So when they have a high tide that pushes the water back up into the tidal basin where the cherries are, this one will survive. And again, it's not widely used. This is another National Arboretum one. I didn't look up our number here, but I have a National Arboretum number. They've only had them brought into the country a handful of times. And so we got this one through the current directors, gave this one to us several years ago. Richard Olson, who was a student here at NC State in the 90s. And is now the director at the National Arboretum. And he gave us this, and I love this one too, not only for its flowers, but not many of the cherries we are growing around here typically get really nice bark. This one has really good bark to me. It has the beautiful lenticels that so many of the cherries you see further north that might not necessarily like our climate here. But this is one that always catches my eye and is an early bloomer. Okay. We're going to go to our last plant, and it's just behind us here. This one is just beginning to open, but it's earlier than many others of its type. So this is actually another magnolia, as you can see. This is Magnolia Goldfinch. So this is a hybrid from Phil Savage, who was a magnolia breeder, and he's now passed away. I couldn't find out the specifics on what he used in it, but supposedly it's a complex hybrid. But the key thing is it includes Magnolia acuminata, which is where the yellow pigmentation comes from. Is anybody familiar with a Magnolia acuminata? So Magnolia acuminata is one of our native magnolias, and I know it as a cucumber magnolia. They grow behind my house back home in Pennsylvania where I grew up. So they're late flowering. They have green, sometimes a little bit of yellow and orange in the flower. Not the most spectacular. They flower after leafing out. So that's where the yellow pigmentation comes from. And there's a large group of them that came out of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden in I think in the 70s, and they're called Magnolia brooklyndensis, which those are typically Magnolia denuodata crossed with acuminata. But this one has some other stuff involved in it as far as I know. So that's why it's a little more complex. I don't know total parentage on it. But because of that yellow coloration, they tend to be later flowering. They tend to miss a lot of frost, but goldfinch tends to be still fairly early, especially in comparison to yellow ones. If you look straight down here, that is another yellow flowered magnolia. That is yellow fever. It's not even thinking about coming out yet. It'll be another couple weeks before that thinks about coming out. So this is a precocious when it comes to the yellow flowered magnolias. I just noticed the other day that it had, last week it had some out that got damaged over the weekend, but there's lots of buds coming on this, and this should be spectacular for the next couple weeks. Our forecast for magnolias should be wonderful. The temperatures are supposed to be mild, nothing below the upper 20s to low 30s. Actually, I haven't seen anything below the low 30s for nighttime temperatures. So this should be a perfect magnolia year. Our daytime temperatures are going to be in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Wonderful. Last year, this was in full flower right now. Actually, probably a little bit past peak. It was because we reached 85 or 86 on the 29th of February last year, which was the warmest February day on record here in Raleigh. So, and a lot of the magnolias were done by this time last year. So this year we're more of a normal scenario, but I think we're going to have a nice mild spring now and a good display. So tomorrow, I think if you want to learn more about magnolias, you can watch Greg's talk, which he's going to be doing instead of the soil preparation that he had originally intended to do before the forecast said this might not be the thing we want to do. So anyways, this magnolia is one to keep an eye on. For other yellow magnolias, in a couple weeks, my favorite is down that way, Lois. So come see her. She will probably flower mid to late month. She tends to be a bit later, but Lois is a sentimental one to me because that was my grandmother's name. So, but goldfinch is the one you're going to see today, and if you come back next week, this should be in full blazing flower. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the precocious bloomers today, and will join us for some more tours or other presentations in the coming weeks. Oh, I should ask, are there any questions? Oh, okay, Marilyn.
What do you think is the smallest yellow flowering?
I mean, the size of the tree or the flower? I don't know.
If you don't have a huge yet.
Butterfly and, Elizabeth are fairly compact in comparison to some. This one's supposed to get about 30 feet, but I think we have a butterfly or an Elizabeth, I can't remember which, over there, and it's a lot smaller. Those were some of the earlier hybrids. They can still get fairly large because of the acuminata, again, in their heritage, which can get to be over 100 feet. Those would be some, but Greg might be the other person to ask. He actually he's on the board for the Magnolia Society, so he knows a little even more than I know about magnolias. I gleaned a little bit over the last several years. Those would be some. Lois, actually, this has grown way more quickly than Lois did, because this has only been here, I'm going to say about 12 years. That this might have been here, maybe 12 to 15 years. Lois has been over in that location, I don't know how long, because she predates me. So more than 20 years, probably 25 to 30 years. And she is a little bigger than this, but